Albertans. That's of all Albertans. That's a very high number of people.
Pollara had a poll that is 55%.
The new narrative appears. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today, we've got Danielle Smith saying there's a deal very close on the horizon here with Mark Carney for a pipeline. With that, we've got David Cochrane on CBC suggesting that with this recent information leak out of Alberta, he questions whether the whole Alberta referendum on separation should be trusted. Should they go forward with it? We also got them attacking Pierre Poilievre again. Let's jump into this.
Ottawa and Alberta say they're making progress on a key agreement that could see a new pipeline built out of Alberta.
We've been meeting and talking over the course of the past year, and I have to say I'm very pleased with the progress we've been making.
The two leaders met in Ottawa today to discuss completing conditions laid out in their Memorandum of Understanding. But back home in Alberta, a referendum on separating from Canada could be around the corner. That's as the separatist movement is embroiled in fresh controversy.
Danielle Smith said probably in the next couple of days, it's very likely there'll be some sort of deal that they announce.
Massive voter list data breach has exposed the personal information of nearly 3 million Albertans. Names, addresses, contact information, all posted online for the public to access. And it all leads back to a separatist group known as the Centurion Project. I want to start with what's happening in Alberta with the leak of this data. And I wonder, how can a separatism referendum credibly proceed when it looks like there's pretty clear evidence of illegality on the separatist side of this?
Well, I can say that there's multiple different independence groups, and one in particular appears to have gotten a list from another political party that he shouldn't have had. And so there are 3 investigations that are going on right now: a Privacy Commissioner investigation, Elections Alberta, and the RCMP. And so we'll let that process play out. We're also waiting for the validation of the signatures, and that's another part of the process that we have to have play out. But I would say that there's just different factions, and before I know all of the details of how that happened, I just want to get the investigations to be able to report.
Getting a deal on a pipeline is one piece. We've got the Business Council of BC posting this. New 98% of BC businesses surveyed say DRIPA is not delivering the investment certainty it promised. This is another problem. We have multiple pieces here. So if we get the pipeline going, we have to fix the DRIPA in British Columbia as well, because the business community is not having it.
There are different factions and players involved in this, but it is all part of like one continuum leading to the ultimate goal of a separatist referendum in October. So with the sharing and the accessing of the voter information, I mean, does that not raise concerns about legitimacy, about security, and about safety for the remainder of the time leading up to October?
Well, Elections Alberta has already identified 568 people that that had accessed the data and told to cease and desist. So I think that they have demonstrated pretty quick action in identifying those individuals. And they also have said that they're going to go through a more comprehensive validation process of the signature. So I think that those two things, at the end of it, once they've done the validation, then we'll be able to judge at that time. But we want to just make sure the process can play out.
This is very suspicious, the timing of this, and then now David Cochrane and CBC, you're going to see all the mainstream media saying, is this really valid? Cochrane's words, legitimacy, is this a legitimate thing? Planting the seeds that, oh, this whole referendum isn't legitimate. I can tell you, if the Liberals rug pull this somehow, they look through the fine print of the legalities and rug pull the whole thing, separatists will be absolutely livid. It's one thing if they get to vote and they don't get enough votes, but it's another thing if they don't get to vote.
But you look at this violation of privacy and trust, it is quite severe. I mean, Jason Kenney's information was not put up on that screen by accident, I would suggest. That was a deliberate choice being made there by the Centurion Group and David Parker. I mean, doesn't all of this, though, put the voting integrity under suspicion and maybe put individual Albertans at risk?
I guess the way I look at it is, if it is indeed the case that 300,000 signatures get validated and another 400,000 signatures got validated with the Forever Canada petition, this is a discussion that Albertans want to have. And that's something that we have to be very mindful of, that there's a lot of people who have given up on Canada. And there's a lot of people who feel very strongly that that Canada is worth fighting for. I'm one of those people. But we have to do a lot to convince our fellow citizens that Canada can work. And so that will be all of the things that I consider as we go through and see if the signatures get validated. But it is a debate that Albertans clearly want to have.
Okay, look,
Cochran's trying to paint a narrative here. It's painfully obvious, and I watched a 30-minute panel of him sitting around with some pundits, so you didn't have to, and we're not going to be bringing that up aside from one little clip at the end here. It's more of the same thing in there. Just this hinting and suggesting, oh, well, is this really a valid thing? Does this have integrity? Just keep using these words, pepper that across Canada. It's really quite something how the media works. It's no surprise why people are voting for referendum when you got stories like this. Illegalities kept from public. This is coming from Blacklock's reporter. Investigators uncovered more than a dozen individuals who breached the Lobbying Act and were neither charged nor named publicly, Lobbying Commissioner Nancy Bellinger disclosed yesterday. What am I supposed to do with that? Bellinger asked the Commons Ethics Committee. Prosecute them. Send it somewhere so these people can be charged. There are some 7,000 registered lobbyists in Ottawa. Only 4 have been convicted or pled guilty to breaching the act in 38 years. I mean, look at Carney's conflicts of interest. He's not getting charged for any of those. Not even the little $200 fine or whatever it is, $500 fine. He's not getting a single one. But what Carney is doing is canceling the snowbirds. It says snowbirds could be grounded for years, conservatives warn. They're saying, oh, we're going to put them on a 5-year hiatus. We know how that works. They never get booted back up afterwards. Meanwhile, I've seen a bunch of rumblings, attacks on Poilievre at the Canada Strong and Free Network. This is a panel I was talking about just very briefly here. More attacks on Poilievre. He's not changing. They're going to start putting out this narrative that somebody else needs to replace him.
Greg, Michelle Cadario said earlier this week, this Liberal elite doesn't want him to change. Just keep him in the air. That's how they view it. I mean, last word, you got about 60 seconds here.
I can't help but compare Mr. Poilievre and his remarks to Conservatives and to the Prime Minister who's sitting down with the Conservative Premier of Alberta in 2 very, very different situations. And Mr. Poilievre is still explaining why he's not doing well, but he's doing things the same way he did in 2024. I sat around this table. My comments on him haven't changed very much, but the polls have. And as for blaming other people for wanting him to change, I push back on that because his people kept telling journalists that he was going to change.
Yes.
And
there were a lot of pivot stories.
He's going to blame this group of liberal elite streak that it's us, but it's his own people have told us several times. And he sat down with Peter Mansbridge, did a podcast on this. He said all this, and now the lad's not for changing, and it's our fault. I just don't think that rings true.
No, fair point.
Well, what is this? Why does he have to change who he is? Doesn't this go against Liberals' rules? Shouldn't you be inclusive of everyone? Obviously, he's changed certain tactics because he's learned from the past election. He could change his campaign manager. They changed the strategy. Just went on Joe Rogan. There's clearly different messaging. These guys want him to change his personality. They just use this as a way to attack the guy.
And look, when Fred said he couldn't make it tonight, we said, who is the biggest Liberal you know? And everybody said Gary Keller.
I'm not a Battle River Pro for the league.
Just a knee-slapping good time on the CBC.
Listen, gang, that was fun. That's it.
It's so fun. It's so fun. You know, they attack Poilievre and say, oh, he's not changing this and that. And Carney's working with the premier and all this kind of stuff. It's like Carney could have approved a pipeline from day one. And as we see Kirk Lubimov posting here, U.S. petroleum exports by the year, you can see back in 2017, 5.12 million barrels per day of oil. Now they're up to 8.2 million. And while Canada is increasing ours as well, we could be increasing it drastically more and have a lot more prosperity around here. Our stock market keeps dropping one after the other behind these different countries like Taiwan and South Korea. Poilievre should not change who he is. This is hilarious.
Breaking news, everyone. A year after promising to build the unimaginable at speeds not seen in generations, Prime Minister Carney has announced that he is decisively launching a discussion paper. And if that doesn't give you whiplash, there's even a rumor around Ottawa that he will soon strike a committee to look into the matter. Buckle up, everyone. We're building Canada strong. Breaking news, everyone.
You should do one of these every day. The question is now, what does Danielle Smith have to give up to get a pipeline?
I know the relevant agencies have to do their investigation, but when something like this happens, I mean, don't you as a government need to put some guardrails around this whole thing now, looking at this to ensure that if this does get over the legal hurdles and does pass the certification and eventually make its way onto the ballot, this raises a lot of questions about the legitimacy of the whole process. So what steps do you think you might need to take?
There it is now. Guardrails, legitimacy. It's the same thing here. Just fear-mongering tactics. They're trying to shut down the Alberta separatist movement because it scares them.
To ensure that the campaign can be conducted legally and fairly once it gets to that point, if it gets to that point?
Well, we have 9 referendum questions that we're putting on the ballot on October 19th. And what we have said is that any of the citizen-initiated petitions that reach the bar, get validated by the elections officers, they will also be on the ballot. And so at the moment, there's only 1 petition that has reached that bar. There's 2 others that are in the process. There's another one that is going to reach the closure for its petition signatures in June. And I don't want to prejudge that outcome, but this is the reason why you have referendums, is that every person who's valid to vote will be able to go to the ballot box. And if those questions are there, they'll be able to make their own decision on it. That's how I think the validity of the outcome will be most determined, is on a real vote on Election Day. In the meantime, of course, I've made sure that I have the status that I need to get briefed in the event that there's any interference, and I'm looking forward to getting my first briefing. The RCMP has...
Security clearance, you mean, to get briefing on foreign interference in the process.
Correct.
You've gotten that.
I've got the security clearance. I'm getting my briefing in the coming...
Oh, we know what's coming here. They're going to use this against Poilievre now. This is just too predictable.
Weeks. But my public safety minister has already confirmed with the RCMP that there's no evidence at this point that there is any interference from a foreign entity in Alberta politics. But, that could change. And we want to make sure that we're responsive if it does.
Okay, but the 9 questions you are putting to the people of Alberta, none of those is about leaving Canada. It's about, the greater assertion of provincial autonomy in areas of federal jurisdiction. There may be political controversy around those. There's no illegality around those. There's no legal controversy around those. The separatist question has all of those things, right? So I don't know if yours need guardrailing and how that campaign will be productive, but this yes-no vote on staying in Canada is already fraught with controversy before it's even certified.
Well, first I'd say that we're putting forward questions on areas of provincial jurisdiction and shared jurisdiction and asking Albertans if they want us to assert more authority in those areas. And that, to me, is the third pathway. The Remain folks, their pitch is Canada, for all its flaws, it's not going to be fixed, but we should support Canada anyway. The independents have said that Canada can't be fixed. We want a divorce. I'm saying maybe we need couples counseling. Maybe we need to get together, figure out where we have differences, and then work together to try to resolve those problems.
So with all this talk of getting an MOU signed and a pipeline finally going, we've got Danielle Smith seems optimistic this is going to happen. We've got on my screen here from 338, this is the current trajectory we're seeing of the PQ party, the Separatist Party in Quebec. Somehow the Liberals have been bribing Quebecers enough, the Separatists enough to, well, you can see here, they're almost tied. The Liberals have dropped recently here, but I mean, we're talking 29 to 31%, where, going back to the start of 2026, the PQ party was surging. Seems clear that Carney's more worried about Alberta separatists right now versus Quebec separatists. Separatists in Alberta are trying to twist Carney's arm. Carney only wants it if there's net zero involved, so he can get rich off of it. Is Carney going to cave to the fear of separation?
Alberta basically fighting back against the MOU, the terms of the agreement that they signed on to last November. And it's interesting to see where they're going to land because they both can't get what they want.
But we can't possibly run a federation on the basis that if you get your way on an issue, it means the federation works. But if you don't get your way on an issue, it means the federation doesn't work, and it means you get to blow up the country. That's just an absolutely insane way to run a country that no other federation indulges in.
I get his point here, saying Alberta separatists forcing Carney's hand in getting a pipeline, but the same token, the Liberals have been ignoring, pick a word, for the West, Albertans, people of Saskatchewan, etc., British Columbians, for decades. They've been absolutely ignored, take the tax money, then shuffle it over to Quebec. He can say it's an insane way to run the country, but so is having dairy supply management hold our entire negotiations hostage with Donald Trump and the Americans. I mean, we've got just a couple of people in the supply management chain here, Michael Sabia and Marc-Andre Blanchard, who said to get big bonuses because he just resigned a year and a half ago from CDPQ. We're talking big fat cat deferred compensation package here, not to mention all the Liberals who have businesses that are tied to CDPQ or the dairy industry, and the fact that CDPQ invests with Brookfield in numerous projects. They're invested in Brookfield themselves. You can see right off of their financials here. CDPQ had a loan for Dragonfly going to Jean Sebastian, which is Melanie Jolie's brother. I mean, look what just happened recently. I mean, March 2026, We've got Boralex acquired by Brookfield and CDPQ. This is a huge renewables company, $3.8 billion. So, I mean, Andrew Coyne could use the same language of how Mark Carney's running the government right now. Whatever businesses work best with Brookfield and with Liberals and the Liberal Party and these Liberal pension funds, they get preferential treatment. You can't have it both ways. If the Separatists can't use this issue to get a pipeline, then Carney shouldn't be giving preferential treatment to Brookfield companies and CDPQ and things that are Liberal friendly.
And if I can bring it back to economics, I am still waiting to see the private promoter of any of those pipelines or other projects. I can see the politics, and I don't disagree with Andrew. There is a trap there. If you're going to be Mark Carney and saying we're all going to go for this pipeline, people who actually promote separation should be saying, well, look what that got us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look what more we could get if we push this further. But my bottom line question is, okay, fine, you do whatever you want with regulations if that's your plan, but show me a private promoter.
This is ridiculous, though. Did she see what the CEO of Cenovus just said? He called out Mark Carney saying that his green policies are making it bad for business in Canada, period. You can't have a proponent come in when it's bad for business. Nobody wants to invest in a place that is just by design of policy a bad place to invest. This is a tired old point. They keep saying, oh, there's no proponent. Well, obviously there's not a proponent. There's not enough capacity within the emissions cap to flow more oil right now.
Tell me that the government of Alberta is studying 3 routes and the government of Canada 2 routes in other areas of BC. I don't think that's the job of government. I think the job of government is to see if there are serious private promoters for a viable project.
Well, obviously they're doing that because Carney has hamstrung the entire industry by way too much regulation and industry-ending policy. She knows this. Like, come on.
That Canada Strong Fund, though, the sovereignty fund that we talked about last week, when I talked to Minister Hodgson on Sunday on my show, he didn't say they would use it for that, but it is something that is there that could be used for that.
The Minister of Finance said that it could be used, and it probably would be used for pipelines. Canadians could buy into it in order to be part of the pipeline.
Yeah,
Wow, that would be quite something. If you want a pipeline, you got to use your own money. Didn't see that one coming. Is that what they're planning? Albertans, you want a pipeline? Invest now. Nobody's going to invest in Carney's debt fund. I've been seeing rumors they want to shuffle over pension fund money into that sovereign wealth fund. We got Stephen Panwasi here, who runs this website, Better Dwelling, Mortgages, Real Estate, Mortgage Delinquencies, posting this that even BMO isn't buying Mark Carney's sovereign wealth fund. This is coming straight from the Bank of Montreal. Says there are few details on the Canada Strong Fund. This update confirms $25 billion initial investment by Ottawa through government-funded, i.e. borrowing, retail investment, and asset sales. The cost doesn't flow through the operating statement and to the reported deficit. Suffice it to say, this is not a sovereign wealth fund that many would think of, such as those that save a dedicated portion of certain revenues and surpluses for future generations. Rather, it looks like another borrowing vehicle to tap into fund priority projects. Further details are still forthcoming. I mean, Carney can call this whatever he wants. This is not a sovereign wealth fund. This is just another debt fund. So jumping ahead here, look what Cochrane does here. He tries to smear Danielle Smith. This guy's a dirty dog.
Look, and I want to get to that in a second because there's certainly some positive signals coming out of your conversations with the Prime Minister. But on this referendum, a lot of the issues leading up to this are areas that are in your jurisdiction, right? I mean, you changed the threshold for signatures to a lower level. You changed the laws under which elections Alberta can investigate something, raise the threshold on that end. You've stepped in and kind of quashed one legal challenge to the referendum, intervened on another. When you look at what is happening here, I mean, what responsibility do you and your government have for creating the conditions that have led to this most recent controversy?
Well, I certainly, I know, and anyone who engages in politics know, that giving a list to a third party is punishable by a year in jail and a $100,000 fine. And so anybody who engaged in that, and the investigation will show if they did, need to be accountable. So I would say that we have to separate the very real grievances that Albertans have from the bad actions of perhaps a few individuals. And so I don't want to
You know, David Cochrane wants to tie them together and invalidate the whole situation. It's despicable what's going on here. And good on her for not blasting him. She had full right to blast him on that. What responsibility, like trying to point the blame on her for a guy stealing a list of names?
Interfere with the RCMP investigation, the Elections Alberta investigation, or the privacy investigation, want those to play out. But we can't ignore the fact that there's at least 1 million or more of my fellow Alberta citizens who are deeply frustrated and have given up on Canada. And that's what I have to work on addressing.
But Elections Alberta says it couldn't act when it first heard about this because of the threshold that was put into law by your government last year, that they didn't have the right because of the bar being raised.
The bar was you have to have grounds to investigate or reasonable grounds to investigate. I'm told by my officials that that was not a bar, and it clearly isn't because they're investigating right now. They found reasonable grounds, and they have issued orders against 568 individuals within the space of a week. So I think that's pretty clear that they have the tools that they need to do the investigation.
Look, these are citizen-led initiatives, but when you look at when I look at it from here in my perch in Ottawa, and I will concede the remoteness as someone who's from the other end of the country, you've got caucus members who have allegedly signed the referendum, separatism referendum documents. You have one MLA from Red Deer South, I believe, who's publicly urged people to sign it, and we've seen some polling that has 55% of UCP supporters in favor of separatism. I mean, are you leading a separatist party? No, I'm leading a party that believes that we need to have Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada. That's what was my first bill. And it means something. It means, what does the Constitution say? And how do we live up to that? And so that's the process that I've engaged in with the federal government, is identifying those pressure points and then trying to turn around the bad 10 years. We had 10 years of a federal government under Justin Trudeau who was targeting our province, targeting our energy sector, trying to shut it down, targeting our way of life, targeting our values. And people were frustrated when they saw that looked like it was going to continue. I think the Prime Minister had to do some work to say that he was moving in a different direction. Wow,
this is quite the interview. Cochrane trying his best to spook Danielle Smith here. It's not working. I wonder if she regrets going on this show.
To your view as the leader of the party, do you think the membership of your party is majority stay in Canada, or do you think they're majority separatists?
When I look at the polling, I see that it's up to about 35% or more that say that they would vote for independence. That's of all Albertans. That's a very high number of people.
Polara had a poll that is 55% with the UCP.
The numbers I've seen is about 35% of all Albertans, and you can't just ignore that. If you ignore that, then you're not listening to the real grievances of Albertans. So I'm going to take it seriously. The Prime Minister is taking it seriously, and it's our job to take action to bring those numbers down. That's what we're going to work on over the coming months.
Okay, so on the taking it seriously and working with the Prime Minister, you said today that you were discouraged when you came here for your meeting with Mark Carney, but left feeling more confident than ever. Mm-hmm. And the signals that we've been hearing throughout the day since you met with him is that things moved a heck of a lot closer to final completion on the MOU. Are you basically done right now? Do you think you have a deal in hand?
Not quite yet. We identified at least the few areas where our teams couldn't get to an agreement, and where he and I had to come together to just indicate what the direction is. And I think that he and I had a meeting of the minds. And we'll see if the teams can put that in writing and get us to a point where we have something to announce.
Carney will only do it if it enriches him. So whatever deal comes out will be good for his shares, for his Brookfield Global Transition Fund. It's got to favor net zero. Now, to end this episode on a positive note, we've got Jamil Javani giving a land acknowledgement at the Canada Strong and Free Network.
Thank you, Takdir, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I understand we are the final panel of the day, so I thought I might, acknowledge the land that we're on, and say we gather here as free men and women on land governed by private property laws, and we are enthusiastic to keep that as a tradition in this country, and also people who do not believe in two-tiered citizenship. So there you go.